I have the privilege and honor of sharing the Torah portion with you guys for this week. And the Torah portion this week is Shelach, or to send or send to you. And it is found in Numbers 13:1 through Numbers 15:41. In this Torah portion, it's a familiar one about the spies. Moses sends the 12 spies to the land of Canaan to check out the land. Mind you, this is the land, the promised land that God has orchestrated for Israel to walk through. And 40 days later, which in my mind, it sounded like a long spying trip, but 40 days later, they return carrying a huge cluster of grapes, pomegranate, figs, to report that it was lush, bountiful land. But as we know, 10 of the spies came back with a different tale. Yes, everything is lush, it's amazing, but the inhabitants of the lands are giants and warriors, and we're going to look like grasshoppers next to them. They're going to destroy us. They're more powerful than we are. But except for two, Caleb and Joshua, they insist that the land can be conquered, A, because God told them that this is the land that he's going to conquer for them, and B, because that's it. Back to A. God told them that this is the land that they are going to conquer. So obviously the people at first chose to listen to the first 10 spies and began to weep, and they made their general murmuring like they always do, complaining, let's go back to Egypt, it was better there. But again, the Caleb and Joshua spoke out and said, no, this is the land that God has given to us. And so what God ended up doing was he delayed the entry for everyone, that generation, to be able to enter into the land. And unfortunately, that they all died out in the desert for 40 years, and only their children were able to go into the land. The Torah portion comes to an end with laws about the meal, wine, and oil offerings, as well as challah, consecration of the portion of the dough, challah bread, to God. And then at the very end, towards the very end, it goes through the violation of the Sabbath. Someone was gathering sticks and had to be stoned. And then the final portion is where God instructs and commands the wearing of the tzitzis in the four corners of the garment so that we can remember not to follow our hearts, but to keep his commandments. So that's kind of a recap of the Torah portion. For me personally, what stood out to me this week in the Torah portion was the two words, speak up. In this case, Caleb and Joshua. Because today we live in a day and age where everyone just kind of wants to be politically correct. We want to just get along with everyone. I don't want to say anything that's going to ruffle any feathers. We want people to like us. I want people to like me. So at first I didn't want to do this Torah portion. I'm just kidding. But we want to make those around us happy. So we want to say things and keep it positive and just kind of not try to correct or anything. But what this Torah portion showed me this week is that standing up and speaking out for truth is way more important than fitting in and appeasing others. Calling a spade is a lot more important and needed than letting things slide just for the sake of getting along. We are not to let evil, unrighteousness, injustice, and wrongs go unchecked, especially as it pertains to the body of Messiah. It is so important because we all make up different members of the body of Messiah with unique and different functions, which really took me a minute to try to process that, because I feel like nowadays we feel like we're kind of doing this walk alone. So whatever I do, whatever I choose to decide for me, that's what I'm going to do. You know, those around me, if they're falling behind, so be it. They have to look out for themselves, but we're all part and members of the same body. So if I'm a hand and I'm just focused on doing what I'm trying to do, or in a football team, if I'm the receiver and I'm just focusing on being the best receiver I can be, but the linebacker is slacking and no one says anything to the linebacker, I'm not going to get thrown to because the quarterback's going to get sacked every time. So in this case, the same way, we're all different and unique functions. And it is important that we are able to, when someone is, or a part of the body is not doing what they are supposed to do, or giving false information, or you see injustice taking place, it is important for us to speak out, because we are the same body. So if we sit by and idly those around us missing the mark, or if we don't come alongside those who stumble and correct, rebuke, restore, and realign them, we might think that we're just staying in our lane, which is what sometimes I do, or that we're just minding our own business and focusing on what we're supposed to do. But instead, we are failing to do what God expects of us as members of the body of Messiah. 1 Thessalonians 5:11 tells us that we are to encourage one another and build each other up. We are to stir one another to love and good works. Hebrews 10:24. We are to exhort one another every day, as long as it is so that none of you may be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. That's Hebrews 3:13. And we are to do our part in assisting to equip the saints in the work of the ministry by building up the body of Christ, as Paul tells us in Ephesians 4:12. Our calling is much bigger than just us, because we're supposed to be united as one body with many functions, as a team with many roles. But as we play our part, we also must be attentive and alert to assist, encourage, and exhort one another. This isn't just applicable, obviously, in this very current climate with the things that are going on in our country today, with racism and such, but it is so easy for us to become apathetic towards injustices that do not directly affect us. But God tells us in Isaiah 1:16-17 that we need to wash ourselves, make ourselves clean, remove the evil of our deeds from before our eyes, cease to do evil, learn to do good, seek justice and correct oppression, bring justice to the fatherless and plead the widow's cause. It is so important for God's people to stand in the gap for those who cannot, and it is important for God's people to use our platforms to further his kingdom. And it's also important for God's people to stand for truth and to correct one another when we are wrong. That's the only way we can actually move forward as a community. So in this case, Joshua and Caleb could have easily allowed the false narrative to go unchecked and say, "Oh, we're not going to go in because it's for the sake of the fear of man." But instead of remaining silent, they spoke out against and corrected the lies. This year, 2020, has been an interesting year, to say the least, with everything that's happened. Lots of storms, trials, tests. Not to mention, 2020 is also an election year. And as believers, I was just talking to someone the other day, we must remember that we should be kingdom-minded first and foremost, as our allegiance belongs to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. We often get so caught up in fighting for red or blue that we lose sight of what truly matters to God and his kingdom. So in this year and in this climate where we stand up for what is right, and like Joshua and Caleb, and speak out whenever we see or hear injustice, evil speech, and may we not let anything get in the way of us fulfilling our roles as image bearers of our King. That's what I got from the Torah portion. Thank you, guys.